Well, I think we are kind of seeing a small amount of that in the UK at the moment. We're seeing a reversal of a number of policies by Rishi Sunak's government because we have an election looming and Conservatives are losing power. And I think they realise they've strayed a long way from traditional Conservative values. There's a lot of quite hard 180 turns on some policies, which I think's kind of interesting. But do you get a sense that there is this kind of swing now? Because I do, and
Yeah.
we had a devolution of power from Europe with our Brexit. We had Donald Trump, whatever you think of him, kind of he was kind of pushing towards a devolution away from trust in centralized powers. So,
Right.
under a kind of populist rhetoric. But I do feel like this swing is starting to happen. It's just not a big swing.
Yeah, I think it is. It's definitely a huge trend. If you look at social trust in elite institutions, it is evaporating everywhere. Even if they tell the truth, nobody believes them at this point, which
Yeah.
warms my heart. You know, what is it? Verify, don't trust. But yeah, people are not believing the elite. They are turning on them. The elite is screwing up by numbers, so this is not surprising. I think the elite's actually been screwing up for a long time, but they had the lapdog media and to, media-splain everything, and you didn't really have a way to get around it. Murray Rothbard, the libertarian economist, he talked about in the 1970s, you could get the entire global libertarian movement in a living room. And the way that they spread the gospel was that they would put little advertisements in the bottom of random magazines like, financial or like Time, like lifestyle magazines. And it would say, to learn more about libertarianism, send $20 in an envelope, and then, we'll send you our newsletter. I mean, that was like the state of alternative media, at least on the right. On the left, there were anarchist bookstores and things like that. But even there, I mean, it was relatively difficult to get the message out. You really had to do it hand to hand, person by person. Now, of course, whether it's right or left, whether it's Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump or Vivek, I mean, you can reach just millions upon millions of people at once. And so that was always going to challenge the elite, who has gotten away with this monopoly over the facts for so long. So it would be shocking if people weren't questioning them. They're no dummies, so they identified the problem. Once you had Trump and Brexit happening at the same time, I think they categorized those as sort of a mental uprising by the people. The sheep were not buying it anymore. I think previous to that, they saw the history as they were destined to win. They were going from strength to strength. They were capturing increasing parts of society, really in every respect, the economy, the schooling. They were really replacing religion with this sort of state ideology. So I think they were very, very optimistic. And then when 2016 happened, that combination of events freaked them out. They started thinking, maybe we're losing because people are seeing through this. And so they did what you would expect them to do, which is that they focused all their energies on censorship. The thing is that I think it backfires fundamentally. I think part of the reason why the content that you and I put out has become so popular so quickly is because there are so few voices talking on our side. As you constrict those, you'll see somebody in China who put out like a Winnie the Pooh meme, which is making fun of President Xi, and it'll get like 500 million shares. Okay. I love Winnie the Pooh, but he's not that good, right? What's happening there is that as you squeeze the speech, whatever speech is left is just outrageously popular because people are hungering for it. So I am I'm optimistic that people are seeing through it. They're absolutely going to fight it with everything they have. I think there will be a lot of people put in prison for free speech. And, if we sort of look for a historical moment that's similar to it, it's probably the Reformation in Europe, where you had the printing press. The printing press means that you could print cheap Bibles, right? And at that point, you had this political movement that said, you don't need the church. You don't need this corrupt elite telling you how to live. You can access the source code directly, and you can decide for yourself. And that moment was very, very similar to today. You could print up pamphlets after Gutenberg, and you could organize like, I don't want to use kinetic words because we live in a censorship age. You could organize protests, vigorous protests against your government. And, you know, in the French Revolution, in Britain, there were many vigorous protests that occurred in London, and the elite eventually had to cede power. They could not hold on. However, there was a lot of violence. So I hope that we're not going to get there. But I think if we look back through history, the closest moment is really, I guess it's the 1400s in the decades following Gutenberg.
So do you look at any political leaders right now as a kind of reaction to this? Do you look at Bukele in El Salvador? And I know there are questions around him, but really he's gone up against the global world elite organizations, and in some ways is winning. I find Milei in Argentina super interesting just because he's very radical, and everything they've tried for the last 3 decades in Argentina has failed. What they haven't tried is, you know, somebody who's one of his first policies is to get rid of the central bank, which I obviously understand you would totally support. I sometimes feel like maybe it's in these nations, these smaller nations, where they have kind of, it's almost like you have to fully break to be able to do something a bit more radical. In the UK, we're not broken enough.
Yes.
You know, we can, you know, we're slowly getting poorer. You know, our money's slowly buying less. We're slowly getting more squeezed. You know, we've got a little bit less money each month. Everything's getting a bit more expensive. But yeah, we're the boiling frog.
Bingo. Right.
But whereas in like Argentina, they've boiled so hard, people are they're jumping out. Exactly. And so do you, can you give any kind of credit to the idea that someone like a Milei actually, whilst working in the apparatus of the state, can be a force for good?
I think absolutely. I think the boiling frog metaphor exactly describes it. And what's interesting is that when the water gets hot in one country and the people do jump, that then becomes a model for all these other places. So, you know, I imagine that a lot of Milei supporters also look to Bukele and, you know, what he accomplished there. And I understand the criticisms of Bukele, but, you know, I would ask for regular Salvadorians, not the middle class, not the 20 families that have controlled the country for 100 years, for regular people, for little abuelitas, you know, trying to go out and play with the kids in the park in the evening time and not have to worry. Okay, for those people, he has been an enormous source for good. You know, the best they've had, I guess, in a century. And so that becomes a model. You know, when we kicked off, you were talking about how a lot of regular people, or maybe people with lower education, they are sort of the cannon fodder who are used to push these socialist movements. And of course, the tragedy is that they then become the victims of it. And I think that somebody like Bukele, you know, the idea of cleaning up the streets, right, of locking up tens of thousands of hardened gangsters, that is so appealing to those regular people. You know, this is not some abstract, you know, tax reform, some Thatcherite, you know, the homes with the vouchers. And no. This is very, very easy for regular people to understand and to get behind. Now, in theory, the elite should be able to see that. They bribe all the professors and all the, you know, high IQ people. So they should, in theory, be able to bring them in and actually mimic them. I guess some of them will, but, you know, broadly speaking, I think especially in a lot of rich countries, the state has become so captured by activists. You know, for example, if we see the US right now where the border is wide open, that does not happen anywhere. Mexico does not have an open border. Okay, if Guatemalans sneak across the Mexican border and Mexico thinks that they're planning on staying, right, not just waving them through, but they're actually going to stick around, Mexico puts them in camps with barbed wire. Okay, they are not an open border country. So that's so unnatural. It's obviously unpopular with the people who have to pay for all this, the voters. So you might ask, why are they doing it? You know, it's such an own goal. And I think the reason is because at this point, the activists, first they captured, or first they got the influence so that they could sort of control government. But now I think they've actually been so good at building that up that, I mean, literally they are like immune to public opinion. They can make the government do the most insane things, whether it's gender or whether it's complete open borders. I mean, things that you have to go back through history to find anything remotely just that insane. If I were rooting for like Joe Biden, I would be like, stop that. You're gonna, you're gonna make all of our guys lose our jobs. It's just completely insane. But I think that that's where we are, is that these sort of activists have captured it. And it's not really right or left per se, because a lot of the traditional power brokers on the right have sort of allied with these activists. I guess they figure do bad things to me last. But at any rate, that sort of elite, I think at this point, has just gone off the crazy end. They're almost incapable of turning back because the activists would have them for lunch. So that means that I think the boiling water, normally they sort of pull it back a little bit and they say, no, we've gone too far. And then you have somebody like a Bill Clinton who ran on a secure border. You have these sort of centrists who come back in to kind of calm everybody down and let it go on a simmer. They don't actually go backwards, but they delay it long enough that the frog relaxes again. And I wonder at this point if they can even do that.